I can't leave. No, they wouldn't survive without me.
How noble of you. Such dedication to your duty.
I left once. Fled into the hills. There was a moment then when I could have kept running further and further into the wilderness. But I turned back.
Why? Was it a guy?
Ancient history. But when I'm out like this with nature all around, God makes me wonder. Wouldn't it be easier to quit? Live the simple life with the right person?
Welcome to Series 4, Episode 16 of Conversation on Eagle Mountain, a podcast about the tribe. I'm your host, Lance, and joining the podcast panel today is Liz.
Hello.
And Tamsin.
Hello.
With episode notes done by Matt and myself. So Series 4, Episode 16. The screenplay was done by James Wiley. It was directed by Colin McCall. And the episode synopsis read out by myself. Ebony finds out just how dangerous Ram can be after she goes on an unauthorised outing with Jay. Dee takes a risk to help Lex, and Pride is troubled when he discovers the next phase of the Technos' plans.
You used to trade with the other tribes. All I want to do is renew the agreement, terms that suit you.
Liar, you're just trying to smooth talk us. Now get out of here, you ain't welcome.
You don't need to do this.
Take another step in your history.
On a mission to convince the farmers outside the city to start trading again, Jay struggles to negotiate until Ebony steps in to explain that she is still in charge and the Technos are working with her to make the city great again. So yeah, let's start off with this opening scene, guys. What did you make of the actual negotiations? And considering this whole subplot to discuss the whole farming situation, don't you think this should have been used instead of the whole T-bars?
Well, okay, I'll start with the negotiation. I don't think this dialogue is written very well. If it's on purpose, it makes Jay look terrible at his job. Because if this is what you do to de-escalate people who already have we've already seen that with him. He has a very entitled attitude. He has a very, how dare you be annoyed at what we've done. And he's not trying to de-escalate this at all. And you're trying to have peace talks with these farmers to bring food back into the city. And one of the first things he says is, we don't want to destroy you. Why would you say that to somebody who's already feeling hostile and threatened by you? And to the point where they're armed up. They'd rather fight you than have a discussion. Why would you say something like, we could destroy you, but you're talking to them like their reaction is completely unreasonable. It just makes Jay look really bad at his job, and I'm not sure why they would make that choice. I get it. Ebony has to come in. I get that, but it's wow, he's bad at this.
You're so right, though. He is so bad at this. It's actually embarrassing to watch him the way he is, and like you say, he opens it he goes to the top. How do you escalate down from saying to somebody, I don't want to destroy you? Wait, hang on, what? Who mentioned anything about being destroyed? Why have you thrown this in? Do we also think that Ebony now becoming essentially that she's so good at this? But I don't know. For me, Ebony was always good at talking to the rabble as a sort of group of people, and she was very good in intimidating them and knowing what they wanted and sort of speaking to those baser motivations that exist in people, like the way she took over with the Guardian and Luke and what needed to happen with them, and basically how she was essentially head of the lynching committee, as opposed to, I don't know, this feels a bit more it felt like they just folded too soon. It was like, oh, you're with him? Oh, okay then. Well, that means that he's on the level.
Well, that's how they're handling instead of giving Ebony an actual good speech that would convince someone to listen to her,
Mm.
now they just have the crowd capitulate immediately as their way of saying, "See how good Ebony is at this?" And no matter what she says, the crowd just goes along with it for the most part.
Yeah.
Because there's a way to have the capitulation without maybe the speeches, which is people are afraid of Ebony, and seeing her with the Technos makes them even more nervous because they know that she's got no compunction to do what she needs to do. And yeah,
That's the thing. Like, because you said it expertly yourself. Like, what was great about Ebony is that she can like control like heightened emotions. Whenever there's
yeah,
like there's a big like group of people and the emotions all heightened, she can play with that and twist it towards her goal of diverting the crowd from their what they actually want to do. That's what she's good at, but she's not good at just negotiating. I mean, just simple things like
no,
that. Like
yeah,
it's not the
no.
same.
No, it isn't the same. And trying to give her a Bray or an Amber or
That's
even
the
a
thing.
Danny, yeah, it just doesn't feel right because that's not who she is.
And that's exactly what it feels like they're giving it to her. Like, yeah, she's trying to give her that Danny, Bray, Amber negotiating like
Yeah,
angle. It's like, no, that's not what Ebony was known for. That's not what she was do.
no,
She handles heightened emotions, and she's great at that, but not just simple negotiation. She can't. It doesn't come off
yeah,
great. And the script for her speech is lame. Like,
it is. No, it really is. No, because she's the voice of the mob. She is. She's the mouthpiece of the mob. She channels their heightened emotions and she basically says what she thinks they're all thinking, and she
mhm,
has this fearsome authority because of her involvement with Zoot, because of her involvement with the locos, because she on her own stands, she is arguably lived much longer than Zoot. She's a much more force to be reckoned with, really, when you think about it.
right.
And seeing her now, she's joined forces with this other group that have got weapons they've never seen before. And that it would be really intimidating. You would back off through fear,
Hmm.
you know. But Ebony can't be wrong, can she? She has to always be right in some way. So yeah. I hate that writing for her because all the complexity of her character is just been washed away.
That line, make the city great again. It was like,
Oh my god, did that not send your eye twitching
it
when you
did.
suddenly
I
thought,
can't
oh
help it.
my
Like,
god,
it's just been
no,
tainted forever. That line, but
yeah, yeah, yeah. Although weirdly, Ebony does seem like she would jump on any bandwagon to get what she needs. So weirdly, I think that probably chimes with her.
But I was like, Ebony, you never wanted the city to be great. You just wanted your part, your place in the city, like your little
To be
corner
great.
to give you riches
Yeah,
and gold, but not. You don't care about the city. You've never
no,
cared about the city.
no, no, because it benefits her to keep her foot down on their faces, doesn't it?
Yeah,
So they'll only advance as far as she wants them to advance, really, so she can stay at the top.
Ebony's bliss was just lounging in the pool, like
Yeah.
with servants around her. That's all she. That's all she aimed for. Really, that's all she liked.
Well, who can blame her? I mean,
I mean, it's a nice pool, but like,
yeah.
but that's why I'm like, you didn't care
Although,
about the city, Ebony. You just cared about like that one
yeah,
little spot you had in it. Like,
yeah,
Maybe they were trying to make it seem like make it seem deeper,
yeah,
like give her, I don't know, something mythical about her. Like, because I have seen people actually use this in their fan fictions and add this to the lore of Ebony, someone who is psychologically attached to the city because with it comes that ability to have power,
yeah. That's true.
and so I wonder if, I mean, it could be careless. Let's just be straight. It could be careless dialogue. There's plenty of it in this season. But I have seen people latch on to that, her attachment to the city and her inability to leave it behind and having something to rule, a heap.
Yeah,
Even in season 1, when she's talking to Amber about it, like, I'm going to be at the top of this. And, Amber's like, of what? A trash heap? Like, what is so great about running this place?
mhm.
And so maybe somebody thought it was kind of poetic that Ebony was psychologically tied to the city. Like she just
and
can't
I
break
guess if
free.
you if you look at it like that as well, she's already done all the groundwork here. Having to go somewhere else and start again from the bottom is maybe work she doesn't want to have to put in again.
Yeah,
Whereas, well, I was
no,
just going to say, whereas everyone knows who she is in the city.
right.
She's got a
She trades on
reputation.
that. She
Yes,
falls
she
back
does.
on that. She's got connections. She's got people she knows how to, use. If anything, in a way, the city becomes she's a big fish in a small pond here.
Yeah.
This is an easy game for her to play, to stay in the city. To leave would be a challenge and a chance for failure in a way that she's not comfortable with, familiar with.
I guess the Technos being around kind of hints at the fact that there's stuff going on outside of the city that Ebony would not be able to roll with necessarily.
Well, I mean, let's hold on to these fools because, like, straight immediately after this, we get the pair approaching the city, and we hear Ebony reflect that it keeps pulling her back, while Jay just sees it as another place that he's passing through. And like, I find that a little bit weird how she keeps saying it keeps pulling her back. Like she's tried to escape. I mean, we've only seen her trying to escape like once, but like, how did you react to that scene?
Well, is
To
it
me,
about Bray? You go, Liz.
well, the time she tried to escape, yeah. I mean, again, I think they're trying to make it more poetic that the reason she left is because she lost the city to the Chosen. She lost it to a bigger fish that she couldn't fight and was leaving, but she was drawn back because she wanted to save Bray's life. And, started fantasizing about running off into the wilderness with him, And so I feel like that is either careless writing or
Yeah.
somebody trying to, again, add this mythos to Ebony and why she's always been stuck here. But at the end of the day, it may just be more about illustrating the differences between Jay and Ebony. As Tamsin said, the city is all we've ever known. Everything else outside of it is grayed out. It's vague. It's non-existent, and there's no talk of other cities outside of ours. It's the center of our universe. Anything outside of it still orbits the city. And all of a sudden, we've got this invader who is aware of the world outside and has seen the world that's still spinning despite the apocalypse. And maybe that's part of what they're doing. They're illustrating as Jay just speaks to this gigantic city that, again, has been the center of our universe for 3 seasons. And here's somebody who isn't impressed by it, its size, what has happened here, what goes on here. It's just one more place. So it opens up the scope of Jay's experience since the world ended. He's been to many cities. He's done many things. There's also, it contrasts the fact that our heroes, our characters, they do have a home. They have a sentimental attachment to the city. They rarely ever want to abandon it for various reasons. And here is somebody who's got a more nomadic look. The world is bigger for Jay. So that's a huge contrast between he and Ebony. So maybe it's just there for that.
Yeah. I also think she's trying to feel him out as well to see what he aligns with. Because as we've seen, Ebony, when she's trying to get under your skin, will say things like prompts to see how you react. And I also wonder if she's trying to see, like, is he a homebody? What does he want? How can I play him?
Possible. She is attracted to him. She is intrigued by him. This is more than Ebony just trying to play the game because she doesn't have a choice. She seems to actually enjoy his company. Like her visceral disgust for Ram is obvious. And yet with Jay, it could be that she just gets him because, again, they are similar in their attitudes of, if I had to do it because I had to do it, that justifies my actions. They both see the world that way. And I don't think she runs into a lot of people who align with that,
Yeah.
who are like just morally gray on that scale of, I had to do this. It's what was necessary. We hear the same words come out of both of their mouths at different times.
Yeah.
And they're incredibly judgmental of anybody else who does whatever they have to do. Like they're both.
Well, they're both hypocrites, aren't they? They've got that in common.
Right. So yeah, it could be that she's trying to figure out how to play him.
But I mean, I think you've made a really good point there, and I just wanted to add to it. Do you think it's also an element of who would you rather get into bed with? Jay, who has appeared to be authoritarian but relatively reasonable, or Ram, who is off the chain? You do not know from one minute to the next what he is going to do. And I think Ebony, being who she is and the control that she wants, it would be much easier to deal with Jay and get into bed with him than Ram.
Yeah, 100%. That second part of the question, in retrospect, should we simply have gotten this rather than the T-bar scenario? I have a thought on that. Yes, logically, it would have made way more sense to just get the traders back into the city. When Ebony's like, we need food, and, you'd think that's what Jay should have just told her. You need to get your traders back in the city. We need to talk to them. But it seems to me in this episode, it's made very clear. And when you include the fact that Jay never suggested that to her in the first place, that is not the techno agenda. I don't want to get too far in the discussion, but Ram's reaction to them having done this tells me that the city being in any way independent of the Technos is not part of the larger goal.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's interesting you raised that.
Because, yeah, that would make the most sense. The problem was that the traders weren't coming into the city because of the Technos. Well, the Technos aren't going anywhere. So what does Jay end up suggesting? Like when Ebony's like, well, what the frick am I going to do? I can't keep my citizens calm or sanguine if they're hungry. And Jay never says, then you need to go talk to traders. You need to go renegotiate things with them and ensure that they're safe. He's like, we'll bring you some food, and Ram didn't like that either.
But then, I was going to say, but then Ram, the plan wasn't to give them the T-bars anyway.
No, it wasn't. But again, I think that still falls in line with the city not being able to look after themselves and being desperately in need of whatever Ram's plan is that he plans on actually giving the city. Like when you think about the whole, I don't, not the 1,000 years in cyberspace plan, okay, not that part.
We have to. We can't ignore it.
That plan doesn't exist to me, but for example, his future plans to get the kids addicted to the game, to become obsessed with Paradise, also that they'll work for credits. And, I have a feeling that the whole point, this is just me, there's a hot take right now, Ram being angry that Jay gave away their food has more to do with that's not his plan, isn't to give them anything that he can't gain something back. I think he would have been okay with it if, for example, the city kids were forced to work for these rations from the Technos, because we do see Mega employ something similar in season 5. But giving things away for free? No. There are resources. That's how Ram sees the city. Everybody in it is a resource. People we take, they're resources. We sell them, we put them to work, da-da-da. We're not caretakers of them. They're here for us and what we plan to do. And it explained why he gets angry when, Jay actually works to help the city get that independence to feed themselves. He doesn't want them to be able to do that either, But that's just me. That's me spitballing.
No, I think it's a good spitball. It's a lot more coherent than what's actually going on in the narrative.
It is. I just wish, again, going ahead, I just wish we have them instead of just when you get shown like they're trading for the tokens, we don't see them trading for actual food.
Oh no. Like we have to work. We have to guess our butts off to make sense of the plot. And that's all I'm doing, just taking pieces and like, maybe this is what they're doing. Because they're not clear about anything that the Technos are really doing. I mean, they gloss over so much. Even in this conversation he's having with Ebony, you think you're going to get a clue as to what the Technos do with the people they take in and what the goal is. And instead they gloss over it. Like Jay just says their conditions aren't that bad. And it's like, okay, so does that imply you would put them in work camps? You know what I mean? Like, are you doing what the Chosen did?
I think it heavily does. It does.
Right. And it's just, how do you gloss over that? We've been here before, and why is the narrative acting like it's not a big deal? So
yeah, true. when they were in the chosen camps, it was the worst thing ever.
Mhm.
Now it's just like, oh well, their conditions ain't that bad. They've gone from freedom to a prison camp. To me, that seems quite bad. You
And
know?
ripped away from their families and their
Yeah,
home, you
yeah.
know.
But we're gonna
And
play that down, remember, depending on
yes,
who's talking. Okay? So if it's like Ram and Java, it will be bad because we don't like them. But if it's
yes.
like Siva and Jay, it will be okay because we
Yep,
do like them.
exactly. And they never get a real proper dressing down. And when they do, the narrative is firmly in their corner.
Yeah.
In fact, the only person who's allowed to dress Jay down and call him out that we're supposed to be on her side is Amber.
Yes. Yeah. But the same thing happens to Ebony. Like me and Lance were talking about the fact that she has completely been watered down, and she is completely right all the time. You can't attack her on any sort of moral ground, and it's the same with Jay. And like you say, the only person who can attack either of them is Amber.
I mean, Pride has some choice words to say to Jay, but Pride is written like a crazy person. So why would we
Yes,
care what he thinks of Jay?
exactly. Yeah,
Lex says some very good things to Jay, but again, they gave it to Lex. You know what I mean? We're not supposed to
yeah,
trust anything he says anyway. So yeah, like the narrative, I can't decide whether the Technos are the good or the bad guys. And I will say that's something season 3 did better. It was very clear that what the Chosen were doing was wrong, even if they were good people within the Chosen. So whenever
So true. Yeah.
whenever Luke was making, giving his excuses, his reasons for what he was doing, just because Ellie was learning to understand that he's not a horrible person, it never changed her view on the group he was with and what they were doing was wrong. And the narrative never changed its view on what the Chosen were doing was wrong. Yes, Luke, you may be a decent human being, but that doesn't make your actions any better. But with the Technos, it depends on the Techno. It really does.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, narratively, it's not even like we could have gotten into a situation where we kind of played with the paranoia. So some tribes have more information than others. So, like, the mole rats have lost, what would you say, 70% of the people that were in the mole. And they know the Technos have taken them. But other tribes haven't lost anyone at all. And so they're like, no, we don't believe you because you're more rats and you lie and you just want power. I mean, you could have potentially played with that, even.
And I don't know if it's because for the writers, the Technos are the protagonists,
Mm,
you know? But even then, like season 2, the Mallrats were the protagonists, but they were doing messed up things, and the narrative
yeah,
was very much making a point that what the Mallrats were doing was the wrong way of going about it. They're trying, they have good intentions, didn't make what their actions right, and with the Technos, I just don't think either they care. I don't think they care that much. I don't think there's meant to really be a message here. I don't think you're meant to think any deeper about it. It's all entertainment's sake.
yeah,
It really, season 3, the show really lives up to the term soap opera.
yeah.
Have they even explained what these work camps are?
No,
No.
or what the
What are they
objective of them
doing?
is.
What's the objective? What are the people doing? Like what? Like, what's the
I mean,
goal?
even with the Chosen, we knew what the camps were. They were
Right.
either they were farming, they were mining
Mining
materials.
materials. Yep. Developing new, like, was it with Jack, new minerals and stuff? Like
Alchemy,
alchemy.
like you
Yeah.
knew what
Alchemy.
they were
We
trying to
got
do.
an insight. Yeah. But here it's like, okay, you've captured all these people and flown some out, but why? Where? Doing
Yeah,
what? We know nothing.
yeah. I mean, have they taken over the chosen camps?
Yeah, like you just have no clue why or what. And I can forgive when Ebony looks at Jay and makes excuses for him. She's
Yeah,
interested in him and they're similar in how they view things. That's fine. That's kind of like Bray thinking Danny was the son. That was his point of view. Nobody else
yeah,
felt that way, And so I'm okay with Ebony like glossing over what Jay has done and making him feel better about it. But I'm not okay with the narrative being so confused as to where it stands in this story and glossing over these horrible acts
Mm.
and
yeah,
and anyway acting as though it's justified to kidnap and enslave people when it's like last time you made it very clear that's bad, really, really bad. And now it's like, the ends justify the means. They're not all bad.
No.
What?
Yeah. I mean, it takes a lot to set up a camp, I would assume. Like, where are you housing them? Are they in, like, all of this it's just the sort of the mechanics behind everything we're being told, and yet we're not. None of it makes sense.
No. You're like, okay, so the Technos flew in.
Yeah.
They flew here. That's what's really important to remember. They flew here.
Don't forget that. They flew
Okay.
here.
So you have to start asking yourself, okay, would it be more efficient to fly somewhere and then set up camps within the region you are currently in? Or is it more convenient to fly somewhere away from your home base, away from your manufacturing plants, away from your work camps? Like,
Yeah.
what are the logistics here? Like, I thought it
Yeah.
was bad when they didn't explain what the Chosen were doing in the outer skirts. Like, what are they doing? They're telling us every now and then that the Chosen are literally taking over, kidnapping pregnant women, and you're like, wait, what? What is their reach? What are they doing?
Yeah.
Right.
But this is way worse. This is way worse because it's a much more complicated operation that makes no sense when you give it any thought.
I want to press the missed opportunity button because this comes down to us not knowing enough about the Technos. And that's the missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Because we should have gotten more detail about them as a tribe, where they come from, even vaguely, just a sort of geographical area. They came from the north, that sort of thing. None of that. We get nothing. We just make it
Nothing.
up.
We don't even get a direction. You're right.
Yeah, it's
You're
ridiculous.
like, how are they communicating with their other camps? Are people traveling back and forth? Like, how do you know everything's still going great over there? Like, even in Game of Thrones, once Dany conquered a city and abandoned it, she always had to worry about the slave traders taking the city over again. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't over. Once she left with her dragons, there was a power vacuum left behind, and she always had to worry about, should I go back and get things in order? And that, so it's like, dude, you can't, they don't want you to think about this. The Technos are more of a concept than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not even a bad concept, but you got to commit to that concept. You got to flesh it out. And I don't know if they were too busy trying to keep them a mystery, or if they just never knew to begin with what the Technos really were. Did they even care? Right.
Yeah. I mean, is that what this is? Just flashes and bangs. Look over there. Look over here. This is exciting.
Shiny keys. Jingle, jingle.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got a lot more of that coming up.
Oh my God. Can I just say something? I really like the makeup design on the lead farmer, the blue line with the sun.
Yeah, I like their paint. Yeah.
I thought that was really nice. I'd have liked to have seen that on Pride, actually.
But, like, I mean, where did Jay even have the T-bars brought in from?
Yes. Good question.
Like, he had to have them brought in. So it's like, do they have a warehouse at the airport? Like, where are you guys keeping things? And
I listened to your previous discussion on this, like the minutiae of how they actually would make this, distribute this. It's more than just printed out labels, isn't it?
And it would work with the Chosen. Why? Because they were a hive mind. Like, Jaffa made sure to break these people down so much that they didn't even question orders. Even orders.
That,
well, let me. I'll hold on.
Yeah, you go. Sorry.
No. My point is, the way the Chosen were presented to us, that it would be believable that Jaffa could count on his people running things the way he wanted them to when he was away. Because these are the same people who, if he ordered them to die, they didn't question it. There's only a small handful of people who ever were like, whoa, I'm not comfortable with that,
Yeah.
But the Technos have been purposely shown to be very individualistic in their ideas and their motives. And so I find it a lot harder to believe that Ram could trust that groups he's left in all these different places, who knows where, are running things the way he would want to, especially considering how moody he is. And again, they all have their own motives. They're all here for different reasons. The only thing they have in common is that they're smart. That's what they have in common. But they don't all have a common goal. Right.
They're not a tribe. Yeah.
I'm like, there should be a breakdown of order every time Ram leaves the vicinity.
Yeah. And there would be, because there'd be so much resentment.
You do not want to get that many smart people in a room.
No,
okay?
No, you don't.
It's like arguing with a bunch of philosophers.
I was going to say, where did Mega come from? Because it would have been quite interesting if they had just dropped in a line, like he came from supervising the whole running of the work camps, and he'd been drafted in to sort of replace Ved.
Yeah, again, he comes out of nowhere. But again, if you, the viewer, who are trying to piece this lore together and make sense of the Technos, because you're writing a fan fiction and they need to make sense, you're the one who's like, okay, Mega clearly was working someplace else. He didn't fly in with them. He was left in charge because he is that guy. Like that, it would make perfect sense for Ram to leave someone like Mega in charge of making sure everything runs to a T, because he is organization in human form, efficiency. That is Mega. And of course, that could build up the resentment he has. Like, oh, thank God my crazy leader is gone, and I can get this city in order too, and Jay called for him. And but again, they don't tell us that. We have to pull on the threads of the storyline and try to make a braid. I think this is what's happening.
It would also have made sense as to why Ram trusted him to leave him behind when he went into cyberspace, because he knows that Mega ran it so efficiently before, and that he's loyal, and that he will be loyal again.
I mean, let's not even get into how Mega knew about cyberspace and that whole program. It doesn't line up, but we'll come back to this conversation.
Nothing makes sense.
No, we are trying too hard. And it's just because I think this was a pretty decent episode. So I'm like, okay, I'm actually willing to talk about this and think about this stuff. But yeah, we're trying too hard.
No, I appreciate it.
These will be much more effective.
No way!
The question is, do I turn a blind eye? Be loyal to my boss? Or do I do what's right? Administer justice?
Anything you like, just keep those things away from me.
So with Lex out of action because of his toothache, Dee patrols the market alone and discovers, of course, that Lex is taking a cut from all the traders. Returning to the mall, she resolves to remove Lex's tooth, however, not before first scaring him into cutting her into his scheme. So yeah, simple question here, panel. Do you genuinely think Dee wanted to help Lex, or was it because she wanted a cut of the market deal?
She wanted a cut of the market deal.
I think it's both. I think it's both with Dee. I really liked Dee this episode. I felt like they actually gave us something to chew on about who she is as a person, what she might want out of life. She seems very genuine when she's talking to the market seller and not wanting to screw him over and go easy on him. She's quick on the uptake. She guesses right away what's going on and then says, okay, and it mines him for information so she knows what she's dealing with. But she's willing to let him off the hook immediately. She could have easily, if she's just there for the take, she could have been like, all right, you give it to me, or give me what you can. But she was adamant, no, I'm not trying to fleece you dry. Like, it's cool. I'll just tell Lex you don't have what you don't have, So that tells me right there, that wasn't what was on her mind to get a piece of the action. I think that's something she thought about later, which also adds a nice dimension to her, because we get to see there's an altruistic side to Dee where she isn't looking to screw people over to better her situation. Like, Dee is just happy to be here. Like, I'm just trying to get by. I'm okay. I don't need more than I need. It's only later, when she's had time to think about it and confronts Lex, that she does think about what she could get out of the deal. And that is surprising, because Dee has not shown herself as wanting anything more than just to be left alone and to just live and let live. And this is the first time she's shown, what, I could get something out of this. And she's playful with it. She's having fun. And yet, at the same time, I think she would have helped Lex. But yeah, why not take this opportunity to get what she can out of him? And man, she goes high. She goes high, 50%, and takes this moment while he's vulnerable to get it. But it never felt ruthless. It never felt like if that opportunity hadn't come up, she wouldn't have helped him.
Mm.
Do you get what I'm saying?
I do, yeah. I didn't see it from that perspective, but hearing you put it that way, yes, I do.
Like, I feel like Dee, regardless if she'd never heard about the cut and that he was getting kickbacks, she still would have been determined to try and pull his tooth to help him just because it's pragmatic in her eyes and she does like him, and it's like, dude, you're in pain, you're out of commission, we got to pull the tooth. I think she would have done it regardless. But once, the kickback is just a bonus, something I could get out of this and see how far I could go. He doesn't even try to negotiate her down. Maybe that's why she started at a high number. She never guessed he'd give it to her. And yet, she's like,
Jay could
sweet.
learn a lot from her, from negotiations, Start
Yeah.
at a relatively impossible position and then kind of work backwards, but don't go destroy. She didn't go to that, 'cause I'm going to destroy you if you don't cut me in.
Right. She's not even mad, She's just like, don't talk to me like I'm dumb. You know what I mean? She doesn't even seem to be judging him for taking the kickbacks. It's something she's used to people doing, And so I just really liked getting that dimension from Dee,
Yeah.
who, again, has never been shown to really want anything.
Do we think, can I just ask a question? So when I was listening to the dialogue, it kind of felt like the beginning portion of it, when she's talking about getting his tooth extracted, it felt like it could have been dialogue that was Alice based.
Mm.
And then when it switched over to her wanting the 50% of the cut, that felt like Dee, because Alice, I don't think, would have asked for that. Did
Yeah,
anyone
Alice.
else feel like?
I definitely. Well, we've seen the similarities of Dee to Alice,
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely saw that. And one of the things I liked about it was most people that Lex deals with, most people that we, the audience, are supposed to truly like and think of as morally upright, would have
Yeah.
just told him he can't do it anymore.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was a
It
breath
was
of fresh
interesting.
air.
It was. I actually thought it was
Yeah.
refreshing that she doesn't tell him he shouldn't do it. She just wants a cut.
Yeah.
And the only people who usually would do that are someone like Ebony or KC, the
Yeah.
scoundrel characters. Dee is not established as a scoundrel. So it was refreshing to have someone like that say, I want some. Give me
Yeah.
some.
And it also establishes that she's not a mole rat. She's a mosquito. They do things differently.
Yeah, I really liked Dee this episode. I thought she was great. And
Yeah.
this was a really nice dynamic between her and Lex. I actually did like the dialogue. I liked the acting. And again, you just get the sense that these two really enjoy acting off of each other.
Yeah, no, they're really good together. And like you say, it was nice to get a different dimension to Dee and fleshing her out a bit, because she desperately needed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing I can add to that. I just to echo what everyone said. I really enjoyed Dee this episode. It was so nice to see this side of her. Get to actually gave her something interesting to do. All right, yeah, let's head on to the Technos. After Java informs Ram of Jay and Ebony's excursion, Ram confronts Ebony.
Jay was in charge. I was only there to back him up.
He doesn't need your help. You're our puppet, not our ambassador. Besides, it offends me to think of my best officer working so closely with a vert.
He asked me along. I couldn't refuse.
Next time you can, on my orders.
Ram makes it clear that she should refuse any further requests before getting angry at Techno's mistake and shooting him with a zapper, to Ebony's horror. So yeah, panel, what did you make of this scene? How much of Ram's actions were for show, or is he truly this dangerous?
I think both. I think it was the benefit of Ebony to see that he is this ruthless and he really doesn't care. Like, if you make one mistake, he will end you. And this is coming off the back where he's just been telling her off, basically, and telling her that he doesn't want to see her acting like that, and she's a puppet, not a she's not a mouthpiece. She's a puppet. That's all she is. And he killed that guy for her benefit, to show her, look, I'm serious. That's how I read it anyway.
Yeah, I like both of these scenes. I like the one where Java has to tell him, because it's a chance for Java. She seems genuinely sincere. If you're going with the theory that she's in love with Ram, and she's really in his corner, that would explain why she felt the need to tell him something like this. Like, if it was Jay she wanted, why the heck would she tell on Jay? You know what I mean? That would make no sense if, because she knows what Ram's like. She would deal with Jay herself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I like how sincere she comes off here, where she's just like, look, I'm not trying to make you upset, and I'm not trying to get Jay in trouble, but I'm telling you this because she wants her man to know. She wants the man she loves to know what's going on, because she's always in his corner. Again, that's if they had gone with that through line, so she would make frickin' sense. But I really like the actress's performance. I liked that moment with her, and she deserves so much better. Anyway, like that scene. And I think with Ram and Ebony, I do believe it was just for show. I don't even think that Techno made a mistake. They deliberately make sure to show that Ram is very pleased with his work before Ebony and Jay walk in. Okay.
Yeah.
He's like, he's pretty sanguine. He's satisfied. Like, oh, you did great work. Awesome. Cool. Put those things together for me. I think it was a coincidence that is when Jay and Ebony returned. And then he confronts Ebony and makes sure she remembers she's in her place. Because right now he's just concerned about her distracting, his general or influencing him. And he already doesn't like that Jay is being too autonomous right now. And then pretends that this guy made a mistake just to do this, so Ebony can see, I don't play. If someone upsets me, I will take them out. Even one of my own who, trust me, is more valuable than you. This person is more useful to me than you, and I just, quote unquote, did something bad to him because they don't want to commit to whatever it is the Technos do to people. So we don't know if this guy is just in a coma, knocked out for a while, or dead. The point is, he wanted Ebony to see that. I don't even think that guy did anything wrong,
No, I agree. Do we think he's dead, or was he just stunned?
I answer with a roll of my eyes. It would be great if somebody actually thought that, like, if the purpose of us not knowing was so that we could feel like we were in Ebony's shoes of not knowing.
Yeah.
Because Ebony certainly wouldn't know. Is that guy dead?
No.
She's already scared of these weapons. But I don't think that much thought was put into it. So I do not know. And honestly, I do not care what that guy is.
I think it was kind of hinted that he was dead, but
again, they don't want to commit.
But they don't want to commit. Exactly. They don't want to commit.
Jaffa would throw his butt off the roof. He admitted, I'm killing you. We're burning at the stake. You'll be dead by dawn. The Technos, no. We just did something to you. You don't know what.
If I had the strength, believe me, we'd be having serious fun now.
We don't have to do anything. We can just cuddle.
I'm not in the mood, okay? Can you grasp that? I'm sick.
You're dumping me, aren't you?
You're crazy. You think I mutilated myself just to get out of our date?
But she takes his discomfort as a sign that he is no longer interested. Reminding him how much he's risking just by being there, she tries to blackmail Lex by telling him what Ram might do to him if he ever found out about them. So yeah, just generally, what did you make of Siva in this episode?
I love reminders that she's just as unhinged as her sisters.
Yes, I was going to say this.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's really important. And it's the one really good thing they did with these sisters. You get the sense that they were damaged long before the virus came from their home lives, because they all have a little bit of that in common. Insecurities when it comes to men, insecurities just in general of people thinking well enough about them and being for show and doing anything to survive, whether it's, Ebony making her own power base or, the girls latching on to a power base. I appreciated that Siva isn't painted as just the good sister. How unhinged is it to tell the person you claim to be falling for that if, they don't want to make out with you, you're going to tell your crazy husband.
Yeah.
Threaten him with that. That's wild. Oh my gosh. So I appreciated that.
Brilliant.
I'm like, she's got issues too. She's got plenty of them because she jumps to that.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't feel good. And she's just like, are you dumping me? He's like, seriously? I don't feel good.
She did go from 0 to 100 real quick.
Yeah, real quick. Now, granted, in her mild defense, Lex is all thrust. He enters the room pelvic first, so, And he's been trying to sleep with her from the moment he was like doing an investigation to find out she'd killed her sister, you know? So yeah, it would be jarring if that guy was suddenly like, I'm not going to try it on with you because I don't feel good, you know? But it was
Mm.
quite a jump.
No, I agree. And I was going to say that's kind of the theme, maybe, of this episode, because we had that with Dee and we've got it with Siva. So we're getting more dimension from these characters that have kind of been a little bit in the background.
Hmm.
But I did love when she said, I could probably talk Ram round, but you've got no hope.
Right. Like, that is a deliberate threat to him.
Yeah.
Like, she's basically saying, if you make me unhappy or you don't want to be my boyfriend anymore, I will turn you over to my crazy boyfriend, my husband,
Yeah.
and let him deal with you. And he's just like, you would do that? She's like, who knows what I'll say if I'm upset. Oh my God.
Brilliant. It's so good.
You are crazy. She might be the crazier of the sisters. That's nuts.
But like you said, it's coherent. It's writing that makes sense. It's writing that joins the dots between these three women,
Yeah.
and it completely makes sense as to who they are.
Yeah, it completely does make sense for Siva. Mhm.
If only we got more of this.
You know what? This is interesting. I gotta say, I don't think Ebony would actually have ever done something like she's done terrible things. We know Ebony is the devil, okay? But I can honestly say that despite the threats she's made in the past, she hasn't actually ever done physical harm to a man she claims to be in love with.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Like, even back in season 1, when she... No, just hear me out. I have an argument here. Like, even in season 1, when she's threatening to throw Bray off the balcony, she had no intention of doing that.
No.
She knew her opponent. She knew who she was dealing with, Amber. She knew it was never going to happen. So it was an easy threat to make.
Yeah.
You know, she had no intention of actually hurting him. She liked to threaten him. She would tell him. She goes after the opponent. You know what I mean? Like, she's like, I want Bray.
Forget, she did torture him a little bit back in season 1.
Sure, a little bit.
Yeah, but
barely.
that's just like foreplay for her.
That's exactly. That's all that is. She's like, I'll let my boys play with him a little bit. You know what I mean? But yeah, they didn't even bruise his face.
Well, that's
she was like,
the
leave the
most important
face.
bit.
Yeah, I like to lick the face.
I mean,
don't mark him.
Mild torture, okay, fine.
Torture, okay, fine. I love that.
A little bit. Baby, I'm sorry I shot you. I was just mad. I'm passionate.
That's why you love me.
Come on, Siva knows that if she went to Ram and told him, she knew full well what she was saying here.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Granted, it's possible, like, just to be fair to her, that she's in the same vein of Ebony where she makes those sort of threats, but if it came down to it, she wouldn't have the heart to actually turn Lex in to Ram, even if Lex dumped her.
Yeah.
You know? So that is possible, but crazy work, is all I'm saying.
I like this part of her.
Yeah, I do too. I'm like, oh yeah, I like these reminders. They grew up in the same household. They were all messed up.
Yeah.
That's why I said their parents failed them. Their father especially.
Yeah.
Their reactions to rejection are
Ah,
completely unhinged.
I so wish we got more of that.
Yeah.
You can piece a lot of it. Doesn't, unlike the Technos, it doesn't take a lot to imagine the background that they've come from,
Mm.
and that's
Yeah.
good writing because it's weaved throughout their story.
They all have it in common. You know, Siva may be the most passive of the sisters,
Mm.
but, you know, so where Java and Ebony are the stronger personalities, the more competitive too, you know, constantly button heads. But you see the signs that Siva grew up in the same household, suffers from the same insecurities, has many of the similar reactions, emotional responses to certain things, you know.
That potentially mean that Siva is the most dangerous because you take for granted that she is like this, but every now and then, you know, she'll pull out a switchblade.
Yeah, I think there's an argument for that. I mean, I think it can be far more dangerous to deal with the sibling where Java and Ebony make their intentions pretty freaking clear.
Yeah,
like they threaten to your face. I think it's far more dangerous someone like Siva who actually has no drive to harm anybody, but can easily go along with people being harmed
Yeah.
just because she's comfortable, so whatever. Like that's kind of there's a lot more psychopathy there.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting.
That she can have empathy for people and not have a drive to hurt anybody, but also doesn't seem to care much when it does happen to people
Mm.
and washes her hands of it. It wasn't me. I don't know what you're talking about. I had nothing to do with it.
As if I would. Me?
Right.
No
That
way.
actually does make Siva scarier because she goes along with a lot of things that she doesn't
Yeah.
agree with, but she just does. She doesn't start showing true conflict about it until later and starts thinking about it, you know. She's also maybe the better thinker
Mm.
of the other three, being a middle child and having to bounce back and forth between those two sisters. I do think Siva's better at using her brain than the others. She's quicker on the uptick.
Yeah.
And that's why she's probably the only one who's able to grow and change and learn, and break free from all that toxicity.
Yeah.
Wow, Siva's probably the smartest. What? I've been sleeping on Siva.
But again, let's press the missed opportunity button because there's a reason why we don't notice these things with Siva.
Yeah.
Because
that's right.
essentially she gets wrapped up with Lex and that becomes their main narrative. And all of this other stuff, which is really interesting, they do nothing with.
Yeah. Again, this is us doing all the work.
Yeah.
And making sense of the strings, the narrative strings that have been left dangling. But she has so much meat on the bone.
Who are you?
Got no name. Don't need one.
You live here?
Long as I can remember. No one bothers me here.
What do you eat?
Rats, mice, insects, whatever the spiders don't take.
Pride follows a group of Technos and sneaks into a power station, where he finds out that Jay is trying to get it up and running again. After accidentally alerting the Technos to his presence, he has to employ some quick thinking and save himself by pretending to have been sleeping rough in the building. So yeah, how did you react to Pride's adventure and the Technos' plan to restore the city's power supply?
I did like the quick thinking from Pride, but I have to be honest, you guys know how I feel about Pride. It took a lot for me not to kind of fast forward through his bit.
Yeah, I won't lie too. I was more interested in what the Technos were doing than the fact that Pride was following them.
Yep.
I was like, oh, what are the Technos up to? Oh, Pride, why are you here?
That's what it feels like whenever you see Pride though. Why are you here?
Why are you here? Go do something useful. Go find Celine some food.
And how does he know about all these ways to get into places? When in terms of the timeline of the show, he's literally only been in the city for a matter of months.
Is that thinking you're doing over there? Stop it.
He's a city boy, don't you know? He knows it like the back of his hand.
Is he now? Oh, I forgot. Oh, yeah. Must have been that knock on the head I got.
This seems okay. This is one of the few times where I feel like the narrative and the writing actually does a good job at displaying the duality of Jay. Jay is not actually a very good person, but he is capable of doing good things in the same way that Luke actually was a good person who was capable of doing evil things. I think that's the big difference between the two of them. Their moral compass, right? And I do think this is one of the few scenes that shows that rather than telling us that Jay doesn't actually want to hurt anybody, this is on par with like the premiere that showed that Jay actually wasn't interested in going to war with these kids in the city. He wants to subdue them quickly, easily, without conflict, just get it over with. They're still cattle, but he's not looking to torture the cattle. You know what I mean? And the way he deals with Pride, this vagrant who's just sleeping rough, the way he talks to him, he immediately calls his Technos off of him, like, stop. He takes one look at this person, does not see him as a threat, quietly asks him what the deal is, and then tells him, you don't want to be here. He's very calm and careful with him. it's not because he really gives a crap about this person in particular. His goal is more important. But I like that duality. And it's, again, one of the few times where instead of the narrative trying to tell you, Jay's really decent, this actually shows him being decent to somebody. But again, in the scope of the fact that it's all about his goal at the end of the day. If Pride had thrown up a fight, Jay would have been like, do what you got to do. It has to be done because that's how he sees the people. So I did like that. I liked Jay in the scene. I didn't get, Pride's fine. He's fine, I guess. It's annoying that he refers to the time before the virus as the bad times. Like, I'm sorry, what? Okay, sure. But anyway, it's it's a nice, fun, kind of tense scene. Okay, you guys have to watch it. You'll notice the chase scene is actually quite funny, and it's something I just realized. They never show Jay actually really running. Okay, when he's with his people, they run around him. He walks with authoritative shoulders, but and so every time they have to show the progress of the running, technically these people should be way ahead of Jay because he's just walking and they're running. But every time they do another shot of the scene, they're conveniently beside and behind him, like he's somehow keeping up with them despite the fact that they're all running and he's not. It was just I found that very fun. That was a fun little gem to discover today. And it looks really funny at 1.5 speed. Hilarious.
I'm never not going to see this now.
I'm telling you, just watch that scene. 1.5 speed. Very funny. His shoulders going, and it's like, he's not even running. How is he keeping up with his men?
I mean, he is a gigantor, so like one stride for him,
It's just the reality of them kind of jogging, but having to keep their pace slow so they never really get ahead of him.
I did kind of think, like, did you not recognize Pride? Really?
No, all these words look the same to him.
Yeah, I think it's actually
being quite close up to Pride.
But if you don't actually see people as people and you don't really look at them, I actually do think Pride's face is sufficiently covered for this one. This isn't like Ebony not literally recognizing the girl she grew up with in her home. You know what I mean? From birth. Like,
I mean,
how many times has Jay actually seen Pride and actually paid any attention to him?
Oh, I mean, the Morats led that first rebellion, like where they all attacked the Technos. I think he knows their faces, but
I think it's completely plausible.
Really, Jay?
I agree with Liz on this. Yeah, and especially since we've already seen that farmer kind of square up to Jay, he probably sees like 100 mad-eyed verts throughout the day, like squaring up to him, and after a while, it's all sorts of blends.
I think he knows who Ebony and the Morats are at this point.
Yeah, but who of the Morats has he actually paid attention to? Ebony is who he's paid attention to. Ebony is the only person he's paid attention to. I don't think he'd recognize Jack if he ran into him again. I really don't.
Don't tell Jack that. He's in a prison camp somewhere.
I just don't think that's the way Jay looks at people. Ebony caught his attention, but he didn't really look at the others. Just because you see someone a few times still doesn't mean you're like paying attention to them, But it's only the ones he sees on a regular basis. And Pride, he's only run into maybe a handful of times. He wasn't paying attention to Pride in that battle. He was looking at the hot chick, the one he made a deal with, the one who stared at him through a camera for 6 hours. That's who he was paying attention to. So, and again, I think Pride's sufficiently covered up that if you're not someone who really gives a crap who he is, haven't had a conversation with him, his face is forgotten to you already. And again, the way Jay seems to see the city kids is just a mass of, verts who need to be herded. If you're not important,
for their own good. They need to be herded for their own good.
All right, okay.
I'm just saying, I buy it. I buy that he didn't recognize him. You see what you want to see, and he looks like a bum. And he's all dirty, and you literally can only see his eyes. You can barely even see his hair color, So I'm like, yeah, I buy that he doesn't recognize who he's looking at, that he's seen this person before, or even cares that he's seen this person before.
I mean, it was quick thinking of Pride to disguise himself like that. I mean, he did it in the open. They actually came over to him, had a conversation with him. He didn't know it was going to work. but he disguised himself in such a way, and he also probably, like we have thought, he's thinking they're just going to see me as some tramp. They're not going to have taken the slightest bit of notice of me. So I thought it was good thinking from Pride, because he couldn't outrun them, so he had to do what he could do.
He probably couldn't find his way out of the building.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, how did I get in here again?
Oh, I don't know. The tree told me where to go. Can I ask, when he comes back to the mall, does Celine mention the mud on his face? I kind of missed that bit. Or does she just take it?
Nope, she's just like, oh, you're home, thank God, because she's playing happy housewife to him right now.
Oh, okay.
And that's her personality right now.
Oh, God.
I mean, even her conversation with Mouse earlier implies that there's nothing going on with Celine. She's just like, Pride will be very upset that you're eating that processed food, even more upset at me. Like, she'd literally like, wait till your dad comes home,
Oh, God.
and
Yeah.
so yeah, she's just happy he's home and he's in one piece. She's not even demanding information like, what have you been doing? Like, we don't even know how long he's been out of the mall. Like, she's just like, oh, thank God you're back. Like, dinner's on the table. Like, oh, come on. Celine deserves better than this.
It is kind of in character for her, though.
I don't know.
She's
She
always
always...
trying to replicate, to some extent, some version of a family, isn't she? I mean, she doesn't do it very well, and it always falls apart. Usually,
True, but she still had other things going on, like in her mind, other interests.
yeah, that's true. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, we were talking the other day about how we felt like Celine was too close to, say, Amber. And now this kind of feels like, yeah, it is too close to being a sort of housewife, but at the same time, it's within the realms of who Celine is that this is what she would do, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I just hate that once they take away the things that made Celine Celine. Keep in mind, from the day we met her,
Yeah.
Celine was always afraid. She was always looking for security. She was
Yeah.
always looking for something to prop her up. And she was always in some kind of emotional turmoil about a man. When you take all of that away, what else is there? They haven't replaced it with anything.
No, yeah.
And so that's what I mean. Like, the scene doesn't have much impact. She doesn't say anything to him because there's really nothing going on with her. They haven't replaced all of those, I suppose you'd say, personality flaws with anything else. Like, what is she doing with Mouse? There's just so many things you could be doing with Mouse in that mall if you want her to play the happy housewife, which, again, I agree with you. That's within her wheelhouse. But she's not doing anything with Mouse. She's not even supervising her half the time, So it's like, what is Celine even doing? Is she just taking care of the mall, making sure that it's clean when her hubby comes home? I don't know, but they just haven't replaced any of her personality traits that she was so well known for 3 years, with anything else. It's kind of like when you're writing your first Mary Sue. When I was first attempting to create a character for the tribe, and I wasn't great at writing, one of the things I was doing was I was taking characters I liked, but taking away all their flaws to make my character. So I'd be like, okay, she's this like Amber, but she doesn't have this trait of Amber's. She's like this of Danny, but she doesn't have this trait. I was taking all the good traits about these characters I liked and getting rid of all their flaws. And I was too focused on what the character wasn't rather than what the character was. And I do feel like that's where Celine is. They were so focused on, okay, she's not this way anymore. But it's like, okay, what is she? What has she gained? What has she replaced it with,
Again, I don't want to press the button too many times. I'm going to press it again. And this is just for Celine as a character. And also for the fact that we have lost the majority of the mall rats. And the thing that I feel is the biggest missed opportunity is that we are not, because there were always so many characters in the mall, some of them were more neglected than others in terms of writing. And it feels like Celine was often, even I'd say in series 1, she got a fair share of the writing, but I'd say from then it sort of was back and forth on her, and sometimes she could be quite neglected, and they would kind of push Trudy to the fore, because many of the traits that Celine has, Trudy also shares. There's that crossover between them, and depending on how annoying they wanted a character to be, they'd either give it to Celine or give it to Trudy. And it feels like now there are so few characters, we could have learnt more about the ones that are there and enrich the ones that are there. Like, really enrich Celine, enrich Lex, give Pride, because, like, I can't stand Pride as he is throughout the whole of Susan, but give him, I don't know, some extra elements. Because there are so few characters now, you can literally do that. You can give these characters that have been, I mean, not Lex, because he's been a main character since day one, but Celine and Pride, who've been at different times squished to the outer realms necessarily, you can put them more central. Let's find out more about them.
Yeah, I agree with that. It would be different if this really was the first season, then you could just chalk it up to the Mallrats aren't the main characters,
Mm.
you know? But the problem is they are supposed to be the main characters and they're getting less to do than tertiary characters should be, you
Yeah.
know? It's very clear that the Technos and Ebony are the main characters, which again is fine, but you can't expect people to not be jarred by that change. It really right now the Celine and the mall are just a placeholder. We're there because we're obligated to keep the mall in the story, and I don't know why they didn't take that opportunity to do more there. It's like the mall rats as is, right? What they're doing right now are just waiting for the next plot point where they need to get involved
Yeah.
in the main story.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And poor Celine, she is just holding the fort until the mall is needed again.
And I mean, she's a placeholder character, isn't she, as well?
At the moment,
She's
yes.
holding space. Yeah.
Until they are like, they find something for her to do, until her plot line comes up. Whereas, for example, in a regular story, we would spend all our time just with the Technos and Ebony, because that's where the real story is. And we
Yeah.
might run into, Lex and Dee every now and then, whenever their stories bump into each other. We would barely ever be at the mall if this was your typical show, typical story. But because that is where everything started, and that has always been our home base and the main set, and again, our main characters, they couldn't throw it out the window. So we're forced to see them when they literally have very little to do with the story.
And heaven forfend, we actually give them their own storylines.
Yeah.
Give them something to do. Yeah. We can't be doing that. What do you think this is? Coherent writing about characters that we've been writing for 4 years now? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what Liz has said in the past. They just got bored of writing the Mallrats and
Yeah.
got very interested in the Technos. Like, gave them all the development and the interesting storylines.
Well, they should have been the main focus. They should have been the characters that we followed.
It should have just been a spin-off show.
Yeah.
Would have been a great
Yeah.
one. In the same universe, but we're focusing on someone new, and I mean, again, it's not like they couldn't have focused on both groups. They just didn't want to.
Yeah, that's the thing. They just didn't want to. They could have done it. It could have worked.
Yeah. What's really annoying about it is that it's not as if they don't have material to work with the Mallrats. They literally had half their tribe taken from them.
Yeah.
Even if most of the focus was just on trying to figure out who they are and dealing with that aftermath, you'd have something. I mean, season 1 is mostly just about these kids learning to live with each other. That's it. That's the plot. Like, how do 13 children learn to live in this space, learn to work together, like, learn to form, That was the story, not some massive, huge plot. So it's not like they don't have meat on the bone for what could be happening in the mall right now. They just waste it on stuff that doesn't really matter. Chloe having a crush on Pride, her being mad at Celine about that, when there were better reasons for her to be mad at Celine, We don't even want to deal with the fact that Charlie disappeared and how that's affecting Mouse.
No.
And she's fine. Mouse is fine. Her brother's been gone for 2 days and she is okay, And even Pride and Celine's love story isn't enough for them. They got to have him doing this weird rebellion thing and her just waiting for him at home. And just a scene of Celine stressing over trying to find enough resources to take care of her home, while the men are just off doing whatever the frick they want to, and she's got a 6-year-old to take care of, and a teenager who is useless. There's stuff they could do. Nope, doesn't matter.
Yeah, because then you could have, you could have that conversation again, restage that conversation that they had back in series 1 about division of labour between the sexes, and that Pride's the sort of guy that should get this. Why aren't you getting this?
So yeah, right now nothing that happens in the mall actually matters unless it ties in with the Technos. I mean,
Such a sad thought.
we should be grateful that we weren't stuck seeing what Chloe was doing today, because it was probably pointless if it wasn't with Ved.
Well, wasn't she doing more doodling, just writing his name over and over again?
She's still on the bed doodling his
She's
name.
still there.
Nope.
She's still daydreaming.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's where she's been.
Oh man.
I miss the days when there were like practicalities in the mall.
I do
Things
too.
that they had to do with on a daily basis. Like, I miss those days.
Yeah, things just happen. Food just
Yeah.
arrives. They just get fed. Things just get cleaned. You know what I mean? Like yeah.
They never need to worry about water collection or
Nope.
who deals with the toilet, because they've got no flushing toilets, have they? So
Yeah. You don't have
somebody's
to do
dealing with
anything.
that. Yeah.
They're always clean. They're always fed, unless the plot says they're not. Like, everything just runs smoothly. We never see anyone really do anything, but everything's running somehow, despite the depleted workforce in this building. And it could have been great to explore the mall rats finding themselves back at square one,
Yeah.
having to figure it all out again.
Right, yeah.
And again, the question, are you going to reject the technology that's going to potentially make your life easier? Or are you going to continue doing what you were doing before? And nobody votes anymore in there. I miss the days when they used to have votes. It's just like 2 or 3 people would take a decision, and that's the decision, because there's only 2 or 3 people there.
Well, they don't have any decisions to make. Everyone's
Well,
just
yeah,
doing
I mean,
whatever they feel like doing.
Alright, that leads us to our final thoughts of the episode. So Dee asks Ebony if she can use her Techno connections to get some medicine for Lex. But Ebony is still rattled by her earlier encounter with Ram and shoots her down.
But with your techno connections, I thought maybe...
I could stroll in there and demand medicine? When every time I go there, I'm lucky to escape with my life.
Don't you care what happens to Lex?
Not particularly. But you obviously do. I've seen Lex go through every kind of illness, self-inflicted injury and disaster you can think of. He's as strong as an ox and blessed with the luck of a fool. He'll be fine.
Lex's condition worsens and he collapses in the mall, with Pride reasoning that he might have blood poisoning and could die. See a panel with obviously all the cast changes that we've had this season so far. Were you worried for Lex?
No,
No.
I wasn't worried for Lex. Can I just say
I mean,
something
let's stretch this a little bit.
before we get into the main bit of this, though, can I just say something I noticed?
No.
Like the slow
I'm just
running.
kidding. I'm
Okay.
kidding. Sorry.
Like the slow running of the Technos. Did everybody else notice that Pride checked if it was blood poisoning by continually touching Lex's mouth? Just the lip?
Just the lip.
Like,
Yes,
and
noticed
bearing
that.
in mind, he'd been dressed as a tramp like moments earlier, and he's talking about an infection, blood poisoning, and then he's touching his lips with his dirty hands. And I just thought, well, if he hasn't got blood poisoning before, he does now.
Lex is gonna get a bum bump on his lip.
It was so weird. It was almost as if it was like he's trying to do something here. Like, he can tell it's blood poisoning by like touching the lip. And I'm like, really? I don't think that's how it works. Surely touching his forehead would have been better. No, I'm going to touch his lips over and over again.
I was like, if you're not gonna like use any dialogue to describe that his jaw looks swollen, because you have a bad toothache or something, or
Yeah.
Your whole face kind of blows up.
Yeah.
You could have used that kind of dialogue that he's observing him. He's looked in his mouth before. He doesn't have to do it in the scene, but he explains that to Celine, and it's like that would explain him touching his face, like that's
Yeah.
what he's observing and keeping an eye on it or something. But yeah, the touching of the lips was just a little awkward, and you're just like, I hope you washed your hands. I'm sure Lex would appreciate if you washed your hands.
Going back to the question on whether Lex would die, though, honestly, I never thought they would kill him off for a second. What about you guys?
I don't think I thought he would die. Like, trying to capture my feelings the first time I saw it. I wasn't worried about him. I can't explain why. Maybe I'm no longer invested in his character. Maybe that's what happened. With the way Lex has been written since the love of his life was taken from him and is immediately sleeping with one of the people who took her, just because she's like, well, I'm not in charge of the operations and I'm hot. And he's like, that's good enough for me, and I'm supposed to care about what happens to him. So maybe I just wasn't invested in Lex anymore and didn't care. Maybe it's because the narrative has been slapping me in the face with a fish repeatedly telling me not to care that everybody's gone and that we're just moving on. So why be attached to these characters? Lex has gone downhill for quite some time. There's a time that, I would have been genuinely concerned because I really loved the character. But by this time, I'm just kind of like, oh, well, but I don't think you're going to pull the trigger because you barely have any mall rats left. It was more just a scientific curiosity as to what they were going to do next, to be honest. Like, are you slowly going to wipe them out? Just get rid of the mall rats because that's all you've been doing since the season started. Is this how we lose Lex? Because when you think about it, the season starts, huge chunk already got confirmed is gone. And then you've got, so that Bray's gone, confirmed gone, Alice and the twins and May, all confirmed, poof, gone, just like that.
Charlie.
And then we lose Amber and Trudy. At least we know where they went, but they're gone. Then we lose Jack. He's gone. And we get a new Mallrat Charlie. He's gone. So
Ellie?
What if they're just... and then Ellie. It's like, are they just culling the Mallrats? Is Lex next on the chopping block? Maybe, but
can you imagine if they'd
care.
actually done that with Lex, because he was such a fan favorite?
I'm like, did everybody want to leave the show this season?
They read the scripts and they were like, there's nothing for me here.
And it's a shame because actually the storyline is both intriguing but also problematic. It's intriguing because this is the kind of thing, all this dramatic stuff, the takeovers and the enslavements and the cults and all of it's dramatic, but honestly, this is what you'd be dealing with at the end of the world. People getting simple infections from a cut, from blood poisoning, just simple things. This is what you'd have to deal with. And we haven't touched on this since season 1 when Trudy got sick. The virus was the last time people got sick, but you could keel over from the flu in this environment, and so intriguing that they would bother to remember what would actually kill people in an apocalypse, in a survival situation, but it's problematic because you basically decided that was no longer an issue in this world and the audience accepted it. So bringing it back suddenly makes you, the audience, forced to realize, how are any of you still alive? You just brought in a realistic issue out of the blue after seasons of never touching on these kind of issues. And I was telling Lance, like, what about kids who had braces? What I mean? Like, just think of the logistics of these normal things that you'd have to deal with if the world ended.
People who had asthma.
Right. Like, you're making me think about that and how the fact that the show hasn't touched on it in ages. How is anybody alive?
Yeah. I mean, it kind of reminds me of, this is real world and reminded me of lockdown in the UK when they were saying things like, don't go to A&E if it's something that's not life-threatening. Try to deal with it yourself to keep the pressure off the NHS. And so, that is the sort, and they would be facing it without the NHS. With no medication, they'd have no antibiotics, they'd all have been gone. And so, you were like, you're right, this is what you have to be afraid of. It's
These
like
kids would be in pain all the time from just basic headaches, basic toothaches, a pulled muscle. They would be in misery all the time. And so bringing this back in the story now, it's like, wait, you don't want me to think about this stuff.
No.
What do you mean? Because we're never going to address it again.
It also feels like a missed opportunity again, because this is one of those things, along with the food, that the Technos might want to show that they had the ability to make you better when you were poorly.
Could have been a great time to actually discuss how they have been dealing with these things. Like, what if a lot of the stuff they used were tonics that Tyson made?
Well, yeah, and she's gone.
Right. Like, you could discuss, like, this is how we used to take care of these problems, and now we've lost those resources. We don't know
And
what we're going to do
Dal?
about Lex. Right, stuff like that, you know what I mean? Like, you could
Yeah,
have the discussion of how they've been coping, getting by with this stuff, and now they've lost all of this, and it's like, what are we gonna do about Lex? This
yeah,
is what we would have done in the past. Tysan was here, Dal was here, they had solutions, they had things. Tysan would make a pulse test if you had pain or a pulled muscle, or something.
Dal was first aid trained.
Right, what do we do without our resources, without our people, without our knowledge? How do we help Lex? It's
And it,
just convenient that Lex gets an infection when people who would likely have antibiotics happen to be in
yeah,
town.
yeah. And it kind of reminds me of when, back in series one, I think when Trudy had an infection and they were reading books to see what they could do, or it
What
kind of
she
feels,
had?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, I mean, if you're gonna bring it back up, you should let us know how these kids have been coping with these things. And they did it in small ways in earlier seasons. If you had a headache, Tai-San would be like, I have a tonic for that, or whatever.
Yeah,
And, oh, Celine is pregnant. She needs her nutrients. Tai-San would be the one who would know what nutrients she needs. You got to keep everybody healthy. You got to keep your strength up. You could have this discussion about how they've coped with all of these minor but everyday problems and how they've dealt with infection in the past. But nope, the only reason the infection storyline is here is because the Technos are here.
yeah, because if you think about series three, towards the end when Amber was pregnant, Tysan was essentially brought in as a consultate. Like, she was brought in to do consultations, wasn't she? There were yeah,
Yeah, she was always checking on her and seeing how she was and making sure she was eating right and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, it's both cool because, yeah, this is the kind of real problem you'd have, but it's also problematic because it's like you don't want to remind us of this because we've fully been in the fantastical for a while
yeah.
where these problems don't happen and you're forcing me to think about them and how your world is just not making any sense anymore and it's not grounded anymore.
Mm.
Hell, even a conversation of Pride explaining why he believes it's blood poisoning.
Yeah, like you've seen it before with the ecos. That would have happened. People, you would have got a splinter in your hand or something. You
Right.
don't take it out on time, or you partially take it out. You've got blood poisoning.
Heck, you didn't even have conversations like, again, you're bringing this very mundane thing in. And growing up poor, we didn't always have antiseptic. And my grandmother was big on natural medicines. Like if as a child, she cured my ear infections with boiled onion hearts in my ear. I never went to the doctor. I never took antibiotics as a kid. Not because
Mhm.
we weren't anti-vaxxers. I had vaccinations, but you couldn't afford to go to the doctor for every ailment, and so there's just so many conversations you could be having. Like you got a toothache when I was a kid, you often would either rinse your mouth out with peroxide or salt water, or you would chew on cloves for the pain. There's just so many things. Again, if you're going to bring the mundane in and you've got Pride, who's literally a guy in,
Mhm.
use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
But do you think maybe that speaks to the fact that the writers who are writing this predominantly either come from the UK or come from New Zealand? So their background is going to be slightly different. And so they've not thought through the implication. Do you know what I mean?
No, I don't think so. I think this is just a lack of care
Mm.
because they've shown to have this care in the past.
Yeah. Mm.
Why do you think they care so little now? What do you think it is? Just bored of it, or
Okay, I'm just spitballing because this is things I heard through the years.
okay?
Now, do not take anything I say, take it with a grain of salt. This is just stuff I've picked up and gathered. Through the years, I have heard people speak about the fact that the tribe wasn't actually doing very well in New Zealand when it was first aired.
Right.
And toward the tail of season 2, they were thinking of pulling the plug. It was only when they discovered it was actually very popular in, I think it was Germany, they realized the show wasn't great. It wasn't getting great ratings in its own country, but everywhere else it was doing numbers. People loved this show. I have a feeling that doing the show, dealing with censorship rules, changing every year, what they could get away with, failing ratings, aging actors, that it starts to get to a place where you're just desperate to keep it on the air. And if you're going to be rewarded by sensationalism rather than strong storytelling, you could stray from what your original vision was just because you're trying to keep it on the air. Anything to keep it there. So it's like, if this will get the ratings, that's what we're going to focus on.
Interesting. That's really interesting because it was so popular over here, wasn't it,
Yeah.
Lawrence?
Yeah, here in Germany, I think one of the biggest like kind of fan areas. I think.
Yeah. And it's, in the beginning, when you're full of passion for your project, you are going to focus on the heart of your project. But if
Yeah.
your project starts getting harder and harder and harder, you might take a more easier route to keep your project on the ground. And that's why the storylines just get lighter and lighter and less substantial and less meaningful. You got to keep the viewers coming back, jingle those keys, because that at the end of the day becomes the bottom line, keeping the viewership. You're no longer trying to talk to your audience like he was doing in earlier seasons. Now you're just trying to entertain them. Please come back. Please, please, please come back. I mean, you see this a lot. I remember when I was writing fan fiction, it would be frustrating to see that the most popular ones, the ones that were rewarded with repeated readers, were often poorly written, but they had great output.
Yeah.
These were people who were able to just throw together a chapter every week so you could keep reading. It didn't matter if the whole story was a hot mess. People were excited because they could always count on the next chapter of that fan fiction coming out. It didn't matter if, when you look at the whole story, it made no sense, or again, badly written, poorly characterized. It was output. Boom, boom, boom. Those ones would have so many views and so many comments. But the writers who actually took their time or really focused on making a quality product might not have gotten the same kind of recognition because quality takes more time. You see the same thing in like YouTubers. The ones that work the hardest often don't get the same feedback as those who machines that just spill out anything, but there's always something to watch. They pull the numbers, so what dies first? The thing that's more time consuming, the quality has to go down.
Yeah. Interesting.
But again, that's just me spitballing and how I looked at the legacy of the show,
Yeah. No, I mean, it does make sense. And I mean, also, if you factor in that, I think this is around the same time, or maybe not around the same time, but you've got that other spin-off, Atlantis Eye, haven't you?
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe the production are cutting corners to produce both at the same time. I know that they share, like, I don't know how Celine did both. I'm guessing that's why she was out of it for a portion of time.
I mean, it was logistically, it was kind of crazy. You had the tribe, you had Atlantis High, and you had Revelations. Don't forget that as well. All like at the same time, like it was mad. And like, it must have been a stress on the kids themselves, just on that. But on the whole production side, like that's kind of crazy. I think ultimately he was stretched kind of too thin.
Yeah.
I'm. This is just me. I'm not convinced the techno angle as it was his original idea, which is what he's always said. But I think ultimately he got stretched too thin, and that's why most of this is kind of watered down. But that's just me. But yeah, they were doing way too much at this point in time, and you can kind of see it.
And didn't they make another album? They were still touring.
And yeah, don't forget, all of that. Dragon Con, the tours, the albums.
And then when you factor in that they had to, audition and hire all of these new actors and actresses because they've lost most of their primary cast for whatever reason. They all left for different reasons, didn't they? Yeah. I mean, the logistics is a nightmare.
I know, we thought they had a hard time with season 2. Clearly they had a storyline for Beth Allen, and then suddenly she wasn't coming back. And they had to scramble. But that's just one person you really have to replace and rework the story around. What do you do when half your cast is gone?
Yeah.
You might have had an idea for the next season, but it's like, it ain't gonna work. Half the people are missing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I can't continue that storyline or whatever, I need a completely new one.
That's kind of why season 3 feels so unsatisfactory, because there are so many storylines they're never going to bother to wrap up.
Yeah.
All right, let's not depress ourselves any further. That brings Series 4, Episode 16 security close. Thank you very much to the panel, and you can show your support by clicking on that like and subscribe and following us on all the major platforms. You can also leave us a comment or get in touch if you'd like to take part in a future episode of the podcast yourself. Just search for the tribe.uk or Conversations on Eagle Mountain. You can also throw us a donation. Just head on over to buymeacoffee.com/thetribe.co.uk, and we'll see you next time for episode 17. Until then, bye.
Bye.
Bye.